week. I'm Anthony McCormack.
I'm Jacqueline Nifsad.
I'm Pat McCaffrey.
And I'm Dr. Pam.
There has been a lot going on this week.
Donald Trump appointed a white supremacist as his chief strategist.
New Zealand was rocked by a magnitude 7.8 earthquake.
And former Queensland Premier Campbell Newman met with One Nation.
But first, the important news. Toblerone has reduced its size.
And for those who are unhappy, they have been having quite the Toblerone.
They now need twice the amount of Toblerone to drown their sorrows.
Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, there he is, the stud moment.
Morning.
He's been officially uninvited from the VIP section of the 2017 Mardi Gras because of his support for a plebiscite.
But Conservative commentator Andrew Bolt wrote recently, fact, Turnbull is not a homophobe.
And as the Australian media's most prominent elderly Conservative straight man who used the term the gay agenda, he would know.
But the government will still be represented. I think Christopher Pyne is leading the parade.
Yeah, and his Kylie Minogue hot pants.
You got it.
Sweden's largest trade union has this week set up the world's first hotline for victims of mansplaining.
Still no word in the hotline for victims of Melbourne coffee prices.
Notice that there's no hotline for women-splaining because that's just talking to people.
What they really need is a hotline that cold calls people as they start mansplaining to stop them.
To Canberra property news, and Western Australian Liberal MP Rick Wilson has bought the Russian embassy.
It turns out he actually bought 5 properties. There was just one inside the other, inside the other.
Apparently Wilson is a fairly easygoing landlord. He only has 3 rules for the tenant. No pets, no parties, and no iron curtains.
And if the tenant can't abide by the rules, there's plenty of room in friendly Siberia. Think of it as like a working holiday.
Police predictions this week's supermoon would cause a spike in crime turned out to be unfounded.
Because when the supermoon hits the eye like a big pizza pie, that doesn't necessarily mean more crime.
Police shouldn't go around making predictions about moons anyway. They should leave that to the actual experts, like astrologists.
Thank you, Pat. If you're a Gemini, the moon is in the 4th house, so maybe lay off the carjacking for a while.
And now to homelessness.
With over 20,000 homeless in Victoria alone, Premier Daniel Andrews announced a $109 million plan to tackle the problem, and in particular, combat housing affordability. The plan continues the construction of 120 new units in what Andrews described as rapid housing blitz. Still, with homelessness across the city and state rising, do plans like these do enough to address the issue or causes, or just a temporary solution? What do you reckon, Pam?
Well, I don't know. Did you just say rapid housing blitz?
I believe I did.
That sounds like the block on meth.
Yeah. Scotty Cam's been up building since Tuesday. Like, go home, Scott. You've got a family.
Get some sleep,
They
man.
care about you. Okay, it's great that there's finally a plan, but it actually doesn't tackle the core problem of people not being able to afford housing, which is still a rising contributor to homelessness in Melbourne today. Melbourne itself has 80,000 vacant homes at any one time. They're called ghost homes. And does anyone want to guess why they're being kept vacant?
For the ghosts?
Yes, Melbourne's silent majority of ghost population.
Okay, do the math, guys. 22 homeless and 80,000 vacant homes. That's 4 homes per person.
That's, so even if these houses are empty, the homeowners are still claiming on tax breaks. I mean, I think it's great the Premier is, moving forwards with this, but should he be looking perhaps at the vacant homes?
Listen, I'm not a real estate agent. I'm only a doctor.
That's rough.
Yeah.
But I don't understand how 120 units are going to help balance out the housing market. Let me tell you guys what we're doing in Canada.
Here we go.
Always with the Canada. Here we go.
In Canada, the mayor of Vancouver has stated that any house that's been left intentionally unoccupied can get taxed up to $20,000 a year. So that solves the vacant home problem. You're welcome. From Canada.
Bienvenue. That's a good idea. Like, why wouldn't our government want to start a vacant property tax?
Well, turns out our old mate Malcolm loves a good investment property, Jack.
Does he?
He's got suburban homes, he's got city apartments, he's got 20 pastoral properties, a castle, a burnt-out soup egg, and a mannequin factory that's also a gay disco.
He's not the only one. A lot of our politicians have a lot of property. We have David David Gillespie, who's got 18, Clive Palmer has 27 investment properties, Barry Sullivan has 42.
Yes.
Let's not forget Rick Wilson owns the Russian embassy.
I would never forget that at all. No, it's about lawmakers failing to introduce laws that actually benefit the bottom 10% at the cost of the top 10%. So don't get me wrong, Daniel Andrews is doing a great thing. Brilliant. Love your work. But the government should start exploring this option as well.
Well, earlier in the show, we spoke to Miriam Sandcooler, a buyer's advocate, and we started by asking if it's even possible for young people to own homes nowadays.
Anything's possible with a plan.
Right. So what are the kinds of things? I mean, we're talking about sacrifice, aren't we?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you can't come out of the blocks expecting your dream home to start with. You know, you've got to be prepared to be flexible with at least 3 or 4 variables. And if you can't be flexible with price, then you want to look at, well, can you be flexible on the type of property? Instead of a 3-bedroom house, could you start with a 2-bedroom villa unit? You want to be flexible with the location. If you can't afford to buy in Collingwood, well, could you afford to go out to Preston or somewhere a little bit further out to get that? You know, something within your budget. And then it's usually the style of property as well. You know, again, if you can't get the 3-bedroom house, is that different style of property going to accommodate what you want?
But are we living in an ideal situation? I mean, we have been talking about ghost homes, a lot of homes that are vacant at the moment. Is that's not an ideal situation, surely?
Well, that's a different dynamic. That's often driven by investors and a lot of foreign investors. We've got developers that are actually selling those types of properties to overseas investors who actually want to get their money out of a country. They dump it into Australia, they hold on to an apartment, they don't have a culture of leasing. We as a nation aren't requiring for our investors to have to put their properties back into the rental pool, and I think that's a mistake. And as a result, you're ending up with properties that are sitting there vacant, and these ghost towers and these ghost suburbs and these ghost pockets are developing as a result.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's interesting you talk about maybe forcing them to lease because, you know, everything you read about housing affordability talks about having a carrot and stick approach. Carrots and sticks is actually probably how I'm going to build my first home. But yeah, so in terms of something like that, I mean, are there other things? I mean, I think I was reading that somewhere like Vancouver actually fines people if their home is unoccupied for a certain period of time. Is
London does it as well. They actually
Right.
charge you higher rates or they charge you a higher levy if you've got a vacant property. Now, there will be, again, cultures and nations and nationalities whereby they don't care because their culture is not to lease it, so they'll just pay the fine and they can afford to. But we've got a bit of an issue in that you've got developers always arguing that there's not enough housing supply, so we've got to build more apartments. But when they're being sold to foreigners who land bank and aren't compelled to put it back into the rental market, then that's just another reason for developers to argue that we need to build more apartments, which isn't necessarily the type of accommodation that people actually want to live in.
And then is that also throwing up an issue like negative gearing, for instance? I mean, there was a lot of discussion before the last election about whether or not negative gearing was contributing to it being difficult for people to find homes. Is that something that...
Well, certainly there are more investors now than there were 15 years ago. 15 years ago, there were probably 175,000. Now we've got 450,000 investors.
Right. Okay. That's a few more.
That's a few more. But what investors do is they actually buy properties to put property into the rental pool to make it available, whereby your typical government can't afford to continuously supply affordable housing. Right. So you need investors, they need an incentive. It may not be the full incentive that there currently is, or if they're going to change it, they don't want to change it suddenly, like we saw the Labor government trying to introduce, and then there was a spike in prices when everyone panicked and thought the benefit would be ripped away, so that was counterproductive. So it's got to be done smartly, it's got to be done over time, and there's got to be a real understanding of the consequences of any changes if the government plans to do that.
Yeah, so people need to work hard for something. Young people need to not just expect to have everything on the spot like we often do, less millennials. Yeah. Like work hard for something, invest and plan, and perhaps you can have a home that you are somewhat happy with in the future.
Exactly. I mean, I know when I bought my first property in my early 20s, it was a 1-bedroom apartment that I started with. It wasn't that dream home. It's what I could afford to get at the time where I wanted to be. And then progressively over time, I kept upgrading and doing what I needed to do to be able to afford to buy the next property up and the next one up. And progressively they got bigger and, in a nicer suburb.
Now, Miriam, I've never owned property, but I have played Monopoly. And it's a lot easier when you own every single piece on the board.
Is.
Should we be putting restrictions on how many properties people can own, though? Like, you get to, 50, and you say, OK, that's enough.
Full house.
You've got enough properties there.
Even if there isn't an actual restriction, I think if you got to 50, you probably should think about where you're at with your life.
Well, To be honest, I don't know why you want 50 properties, because it's a lot of accounting fees, it's a lot of maintenance, it's a lot of repairs, it's a lot of managers to manage.
As well.
A lot of ghosts, a lot of bad neighbours and potentially bad tenants. So my position isn't that you want 50 average properties. If you're going to invest, you want 3, 4, 5 really high-performing investment-grade properties, because that's just going to help you achieve your objective. It's usually the selling agents and the developers and the spruikers that are all out there telling you need this many because they have to sell it.
Miriam, thank you so much for talking with us tonight. We have to take a short break. We'll be back after this.
Air fresheners, or as they were known before the 1950s, opening a window. Ah, the 50s, back when meth was legal. Not our finest era for science. And yet, the post-war period ushered in the modern chemical revolution, when thousands of products flooded the shelves. Products like air fresheners with idiotic names like Avalanche. What does an avalanche smell like? Dead snowboarders? Or my personal favorite, For Her. This better smell like Sauv Blanc and wage equality. Now, don't get me wrong. I like my curry and I get plenty of fiber. I regularly need to freshen the air. But is this the best way to do it? Let's find out. A quick Google shows the thousands of chemicals used in air fresheners. Yikes! You wouldn't shotgun an air freshener like a beer. This, don't do it. So, is it okay to breathe it in all day?
I guess so, otherwise why would they be selling it? But I haven't really looked that far into it.
No, of course, because
Yeah.
you would trust what's being sold on the shelves,
Yeah.
wouldn't you? A lot of the chemicals in air fresheners are toxins without safe exposure limits, linked to countless health problems. Why are they for sale? We went to a local company to learn more. Thanks for talking with us.
My pleasure. Ask me anything.
Do you know what benzene is?
This interview's over. No thanks. Get that out of my face. No.
This is how it works. You have the International Fragrance Association, IFRA. They release a list of 3,500 chemicals that can be used in fragrance products. These chemicals are reviewed by a panel of experts. The experts are given data from the Research Institute of Fragrance Materials, which, guess what, is the scientific arm of IFRA. It's worse than that. There are 15 executive members on their board, 13 of which directly manufacture these 3,500 chemicals. Conflict of interest? You tell me. Di said it best.
They don't put people's health above money.
So, what can you do about this? Well, you can try and avoid chemicals. Good luck, sincerely. More importantly, you can lobby the Department of Industry for more transparent labeling. And finally, you can always take half a lemon and fill it with salt. It's a good alternative. See you next time.
Asylum seekers. Working out the best approach to this issue is a bit like ordering from Domino's Pizza. There's definitely no right choice, and you just have to hope whatever choice you do make doesn't leave you feeling too sick afterwards. Last week, the government announced they're planning to send refugees from Manus Island and Nauru to Donald Trump's America, presumably to reinforce their message that seeking asylum in Australia by boat is a bad idea. And now they also want to stop refugees who arrived by boat after July 2013 from ever coming to Australia for any reason, whether it's tourism, work, or just because they want to tell Koshy to fuck off to his face. And my first concern is that this law is retrospective, because on superannuation, I seem to remember retrospectivity being a problem.
Government for that measure, claiming it was retrospective, something ministers denied.
Yes, apparently retrospectivity is only a problem for the Coalition when it affects the top 4% of income earners. It's a rich people's problem, like how long Porsche maintenance takes, or whether to follow Gwyneth Paltrow's lifestyle advice. What's that, Gwyneth? Can a shrub in Gabon cure opioid addiction? No. But let's start by acknowledging this is difficult, and complexity can be good. And it's fine to admit that there might not be completely right answers here. But it would be better if everyone, politicians, journalists, advocates, comedy presenters who mistakenly think they have something important to say, acknowledged this is complex. And to be clear, our policies matter. The Coalition has reduced boats, and I don't have to trust the government to think that. I just need to know that if boats were arriving at the rate they were under Labor, the person in charge of keeping that a secret would be Peter Dutton. And I don't trust Peter Dutton to keep that a secret. I don't trust Peter Dutton to keep his PIN number secret. It's 1234, by the way. That's just something he told me. So it's time to call bullshit on everyone who tries to simplify this issue. When the Coalition says they're only detaining people for humanitarian reasons because they want to stop deaths at sea while also reserving the right to push boats back into international waters, or just flat out detain people in inhumane conditions for as long as they like, well, claiming you're humanitarians would at least be a little easier to believe if you'd tripled the humanitarian refugee intake, because someone's got to live in Ipswich. But you didn't, which means you're not humanitarians. You just like that this debate gives you a chance to crank out Stop the Boats, your most popular political tune, which goes great with your hardcore fans. You're basically Bob Geldof. And to be clear, no one likes Bob Geldof. And Labor under Rudd, well, they dismantled the Pacific Solution. Then the boats started, people died at sea, and they got put in detention centres. So now they essentially agree with everything the Coalition does because they're trying to appear exactly as tough as them, which will never work. Because even if you claim you're the same as the Coalition, people still aren't really going to believe it. Because in this case, the Coalition is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you, Labor Party, are Danny DeVito. And the Greens? Well, they can mouth platitudes like let them stay, in the knowledge that they don't have to have practical solutions to this, because they're about as close to forming government as a used condom filled with regret and Karl Stefanovic's semen is. Which leaves us right here. At the point where the government announces it wants to ban refugees arriving by boat from ever entering Australia again, and we as a citizenry don't really seem to care that much. Though to be fair, if 23-year-old Omid setting himself on fire on Nauru didn't make us care, maybe nothing will. You know what might make me feel a little better? If the government let us know what was done to refugees on Manus and Nauru, what was done on our behalf. Because the only way we can really work out whether any of this is okay is if we know what we did to these people in the first place. My point is, we need that information. Because whether it's a refugee deal or whatever a Domino's tandoori chicken pizza is. Right now, I'm starting to feel a little sick.
Recently just occurred to me that I'm going to be single and alone for possibly the rest of my life. And that's okay. But if I can't be safe and secure in the arms of someone who loves me, I want to know that I can be safe and secure in the arms of public transport and walking alone by myself at night. According to Plan International's A Right to the Night report, almost a third of Australian girls avoid public places at night, and almost a quarter believe it's not safe to travel alone on public transport.
They were really modifying their behaviour because they were feeling unsafe. So rather than like after school or after uni going to the gym or going out to see bands or do things,
They'd be social.
They were heading home to keep themselves safe. And so we were kind of intrigued in that, because the truth is actually in most cities in Australia, girls are safer there, sometimes even safer than they would be in their own home in terms of real violence. But what girls told us was that all the reporting of violent crimes against women kind of blame victims. And so they've internalised that, and they're saying, well, we feel like we have to keep ourselves safe because if something happens to us, it'll be our fault.
Oh, it's always our fault. So the fact of the matter is, many women feel threatened by, well, men. But not the good ones. Nope, the dickheads, and I've met quite a few. So how do regular, not yet classified men feel? I went out in the streets to find out. Do you feel safe on public transport?
Generally, yeah.
Yes, mostly. I travel quite a bit around the world and I feel quite safe in Melbourne.
I think as a man, you have, just because of a patriarchal society, a lot of the time you feel a lot safer, because who's going to come up to you besides another man?
After a certain time, about 8, 9, when it gets dark, you see a few crazy people on the train. But majority throughout the day, yes, it's safe, very safe.
I've never been threatened by any crazy people or anything like that.
With jazz handsing?
Yeah, I've never been threatened by anyone with jazz hands, which is great.
Do you think it's different for women?
Not necessarily.
I feel like if I was a woman and I was getting the trains that I do, like I get trains late, I can get there like 3 and that sort of thing, I probably wouldn't feel safe.
Do you think that because you're a man, you're probably not as aware of it happening often as women would be aware?
Probably yes. Yeah. I mean, they probably will look at it differently. So you're right in that sense. Yes.
Most women that I know have had a bad experience.
But what's the answer? Well, my friends at Plan International had some insights.
Plan has given us the opportunity to be able to speak to like the counsellors and like people from City of Melbourne.
And how do people get involved with the Free to Be map as well?
Drop a pin, and you let people know what your experiences were. We want good ones as well as bad ones, and we want suggestions on how to change things, because it's by girls for girls, so we really want women to be involved.
Hi, Dr. Mifsud. Stay safe, Melbourne.
Well, we Australians are known worldwide for our fair dinkum larrikin sense of humour and how we treat asylum seekers, but the government of the Northern Territory weren't laughing after a group called NT Official started selling merchandise bearing an uncanny resemblance to Tourism NT's official advertising campaign, bearing the slogan, "See you in the NT." The group make no claim to be affiliated to Tourism NT in any way, just cheeky lovers of the top end.
There's so much negativity surrounding this. I don't get it. A lot of NT negative Nigels. I think it's bloody great.
Well, I think in fairness, there was some concern that they'd used a photograph of Uluru in some of the issues, some of the first drafts they had. And I think there was an NT official who said, well, it was meant to be in good fun. This campaign was born out of love for the Northern Territory and its people, so we've removed any images that they deemed offensive or not respectful. Yeah.
And the issue is that Tourism NT, they're not actually concerned about any potential racism or sexism. They're actually more upset.
What would they be?
Yeah. Well, they're actually more upset about is the use of their images without proper credit. So that's what's really got their knickers in a knot.
Yeah. Well, let's compare the images if we can. So we've got the official image. This is the official image. And now this is the unofficial image.
Is that a Brolga?
So they're kind of similar, but are they similar enough for a legal challenge?
Well, maybe not. After all, their website does have a pretty comprehensive disclaimer full of legal jargon about how they've got nothing to do with the official campaign. But, those images are very similar. Sort of like how Vanilla Ice didn't do an official version of Under Pressure.
Yes. And may I just say, unlike Lara Bingle asking you, where the bloody hell are ya? I actually think this is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that where the bloody hell are you? That cost
how I did it.
what is the actual figure? $180 million. It was government official, and it was created by a professional London-based agency. How many houses could young people buy with $180 million?
Who needs houses when you have, See You in the NT t-shirt? So you can sell them for, $20, $30 a pop? Pat, what's that? Do the maths.
Sorry, it was 180 million, wasn't it?
Yep,
divided by 30.
Let me help you out.
Pat,
Come on, I got you back. I got you. That's 6 million t-shirts, guys, or roughly 1 for every 4 Australians.
You might have to sew it together for some people.
So if we let these guys do the advertising campaign, number 1, we'd have a funnier campaign. Number 2, we'd have t-shirts for days. And number 3, we'd have places to live.
I say we give these people the job.
Well, that's the show for tonight. Please thank all of our special guests, our lovely hosts, Jacqueline Mifsud, Pat McCaffrey, and Dr. Pam. Dr. Pam?
Dr. Pam.
I'm Anthony McCoy. Good night.
Lines and body odor.
Mystical Garden.
Mystical Garden? What does mysticism smell like? You're not supposed to know. That's the whole point.
Hesperidia.
Hesperidia? That's not even a word.
Mediterranean fig.
Mediterranean fig? What's wrong with the Australian fig? They grew here, am I right?
Miami.
Miami? What does that smell like? Spandex and rollerblading?
Sparkling citrus.
Sparkling citrus? What does that even mean? Citrus doesn't sparkle. Open a book, marketers.
Sensual woods.
Sensual woods? I don't want to go there. That doesn't sound safe. That doesn't sound legal.